Some nights change your life forever. Not because you planned for them, not because you made a mistake, but because fate quietly decided that when the sun came up, you would never be the same again. This young nurse had no idea that this would be one of those nights as she went about her duty at her place of work. By the time Nurse Niniola finally signed out of her shift, exhaustion clung to every part of her body. She wasn't supposed to be leaving this late. Her shift normally ended at 10 o'clock every night. But just as she had been preparing to hand over duty, the hospital received an emergency call. The nurse, scheduled to relieve her, had suddenly fallen ill and couldn't make it to work. With no one else available, Niniola had stayed behind. One extra hour became two, and two became three. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning before another nurse finally arrived to take over. "I'm so sorry," a colleague said, rushing in, still trying to catch her breath. Niniola only smiled and said, "It wasn't your fault." Then she gathered her handbag, wished everyone good night, and walked out of the hospital into the cold, silent night. The parking lot was almost empty. A cool breeze brushed against her face as she wrapped a cardigan tighter around herself and ordered an Uber. A few minutes later, the headlights of a Toyota pulled into the driveway. "Niniola?" the driver asked after lowering his window. "Yes." Then the driver smiled warmly and said, "Good evening, please hop in." Nini climbed into the back seat, leaned her head against the headrest, and released a long, tired sigh. "Long night, huh?" the driver asked as he eased the car onto the road. "Oh, the longest," Nini replied. The driver chuckled and said, "I can imagine. Hospitals never really sleep." "Oh, no, they don't," Niniola agreed. And for the next several minutes, neither of them spoke again. The city slowly disappeared behind them. Streetlights became fewer, and buildings gave way to long stretches of lonely road lined with thick trees on both sides. The darkness outside felt unusually heavy. Niniola glanced through the window. She couldn't wait to get home. Her mother would probably still be awake. The elderly woman had been battling severe arthritis for the past 3 years. Some days she could barely stand without help. Ever since Niniola's older brother relocated to Ghana after marrying a Ghanaian woman, caring for their mother had become entirely her responsibility. But she never complained. Her mother had sacrificed everything to raise them. So now it was her turn. She smiled to herself. Just a little longer, I will finally be home. Then suddenly, boom! A deafening clap of thunder exploded across the sky. Niniola jumped at the back seat, and almost immediately, a brilliant flash of lightning ripped through the darkness, illuminating the road as though it were daytime. The driver tightened both hands around the steering wheel. "Oh, that came out of nowhere, miss," he muttered. Before Niniola could respond to him, the car slowed, and then it stopped completely. The driver quietly pulled over to the side of the deserted road. Niniola frowned as she asked, "Why are you stopping? Why are we stopping here?" There was no answer. "Driver!" she called out. Still nothing. Then right before our eyes, the driver's head slowly dropped forward. His hands slipped from the steering wheel. Within seconds, he was asleep. Fast asleep. Niniola stared at him in disbelief. Driver! Her heartbeat quickened. Driver, wake up! She leaned forward from the back seat and tapped his shoulder. There was still no response. The silence outside suddenly felt terrifying. Nini looked through the windshield. Not a single passing vehicle. No houses, no people, only darkness stretching endlessly in every direction. Fear began crawling up her spine. This isn't funny, she said, shaking the driver harder. Wake up, please. This road is not safe. Still nothing. Her mind immediately switched into professional mode. Something must be medically wrong, she thought. Then she quickly climbed into the front passenger seat and reached for his wrist. But the driver's pulse was strong. It was steady and completely normal. Nini frowned. How is this possible? He wasn't unconscious. He wasn't having a seizure. He wasn't in cardiac arrest. He was simply sleeping, and deeply at that, as if nothing in the world could wake him. Just then, the first drop of rain landed on the windshield, then another and another. Within seconds, the heavens opened. Rain crashed down with unbelievable force, pounding against the car roof so loudly it almost drowned out every other sound. Niniola looked outside. What is happening tonight? Then she heard a loud crack. The loudest thunder she had ever heard exploded directly above them. A blinding bolt of lightning shot across the sky and struck not the car, but her. Ha! Niniola screamed. Her entire body lit up with an eerie blue-white glow. Electric currents danced around the skin like thousands of tiny streams of light. Niniola looked down at her trembling hands. They were glowing, actually glowing blue color. What? Her voice shook. This can't be. The strange light spread from her fingertips to her arms, then across her entire body. Every strand of her hair stood on end and her eyes shone bright blue. For one terrifying moment, it felt as though the storm itself had entered her body. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The glow disappeared, and the thunder faded. Even the rain softened. Niniola staggered backward, barely catching herself before collapsing into the back seat. She struggled to steady her breathing. What was that? Her vision blurred. Her eyelids suddenly became impossibly heavy. She tried to stay awake, but she couldn't, and within seconds, she fell into a deep, unnatural sleep, and the lonely road fell silent once again. Sometime later, there was a miss. Miss, wake up. It was the driver. But the voice sounded distant at first to Niniola, as though she were floating through a dream. Miss, please wake up. Niniola's eyelids fluttered. She opened her eyes and gasped. A man's face hovered inches above hers. She instinctively jerked backward, her heart pounding wildly. Then she remembered it was an Uber driver. Her breathing slowed, but only slightly. Everything came rushing back. The lonely road, the driver falling asleep behind the wheel, the violent storm, the blinding lightning, and the strange glow, blue glow that had covered her body. And then nothing, a complete blank. That was all she remembered. She sat up so quickly that her head spun. What happened? She whispered. The driver looked just as confused as she felt. I wish I knew, he admitted, scratching his head. 1 minute I was driving, the next thing I knew, I woke up just now. You don't remember anything? Nini asked him. The driver slowly shook his head. Nothing. Niniola stared at him. I remember trying to wake you. You just fell asleep. And then the storm came. Niniola continued. The driver nodded. Yes. He glanced through the windshield. The funny thing is, he said thoughtfully, before I came to pick you up, the radio had announced that there would be a heavy storm tomorrow. But obviously, they got the forecast wrong. He raised his wrist to check his watch. Then his eyebrows shot upward. Oh, what? Niniola asked. He turned the watch toward her. I guess today is that tomorrow. They were right. Niniola looked. The digital display read 2:45 a.m. Her eyes widened. What? That couldn't be right. She looked at the dashboard clock. It showed exactly the same time. Nearly 2 hours had vanished. 2 whole hours. Neither of them had any memory of what had happened during that time. Silence filled the car. Neither wanted to say what both were thinking. It wasn't normal, it wasn't possible. Finally, Niniola forced herself to speak. But I don't understand. Neither do I, the driver replied quietly. She looked out at the road. The rain had stopped as suddenly as it had started. The sky was calm again, almost too calm. Then another thought struck her. Mom! Her voice trembled. My mother is alone. She grabbed the phone. Several missed calls. Her stomach tightened. She tried to call her mother back because at times she couldn't even get out of bed without help. Niniola had promised she wouldn't be too late. Now she had been gone for hours. I'm sorry, the driver said sincerely. Let's get you home. She nodded quickly. Please. Without another word, he started the engine. This time, the journey continued without interruption. Neither of them spoke again. Both were trapped inside their own thoughts, trying to make sense of something that refused to make sense. When they finally reached her house, the clock on the dashboard still read 2:45 a.m. So strange. The driver turned to her. I'm sorry about tonight. Niniola managed a weak smile. I said it wasn't your fault. Have a great night. Then she stepped out of the car. As he drove away, she stood for a moment, staring into the quiet street. A strange feeling settled deep inside her. Something had happened on that lonely road. Something impossible. She just didn't know what yet. Thank you guys for watching Supernurse. That is the title of the story. And watch out for part 2. Cheers.